Is that a good start? Should we just dive right in?
Let's do it.
Okay. I graduated in 1990 with a BFA in the painting department. Everybody can see it. All right, so this is about what to title it. Basically, this is a 2-year project. And like any projects or bodies of work, they take their own path. Like you start out with this one idea and then they end up taking on their own life, and this most certainly did. So a little bit about me, just the things that I feel are relevant to this conversation is I am a mother to a 16-year-old daughter. While I grew up in Los Angeles, I grew up in Venice, California. I'm very much an LA girl. In the last 20 years, I have been living in what I would consider a rather intimate rural town, not as small as where Adrian lives. But I guess when you come from LA, everything's small after that. This exhibition is happening in August, and all of my work is very community based. It's kind of the heart of how I work. I'll share that just a little bit as we move through. And I really, one of the goals I have for this exhibition is to bring a broader perspective to the rural community. So I did some digging and found some information about like, how do other people title exhibitions? And so here were some comments and things that came up. David Rubin at the San Antonio Museum of Art basically just said that titling your exhibition is your initial marketing hook. And of course that makes sense, but you know, sometimes I don't see my work through, you know, through a perspective, a broader perspective, because I'm so close and intimate and involved. He also commented that if the title is too esoteric, people won't have a clue of what the show is about. So, right? I mean, how many exhibits have we been to with that? Although I would say that this group would probably be attracted to, you know, something that was, might scare off other people or intimidate other people. Here is another thing that I found out, or when I was just kind of breaking it down to more information or bringing it to the forefront of my mind, is that the 2-part title is something that is really popular. Basically, it's a cliche or a sexy hook combined with a fuller explanation. So for example, generally electric, and then you would add light and electricity in contemporary art. Then you have Arnold Lehman over at the Brooklyn Museum, who prefers to do art exhibition titles to be provocative so that they suggest but do not tell. And you could imagine a whole other series of ways in which this is done. And here are 3 examples. Treasures of, it could be whatever, treasures of the open sea or treasures of, you know, Renaissance art, or masterpieces from ... the golden age of ... Another thing that you might consider when naming your exhibition, as they do at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, is they're very tied into keywords or tags. I actually found that you know, for as social media savvy as I am, I had never really, I don't know, as an artist, that's almost, I don't know, fill in the blank for me. I mean, what's the word? It feels so trite to think about that in advance. But anyhow, one of their titles was Birth of the Cool. And then I underlined all the words that would be great search words or keywords or tags. California art, design, and culture at mid-century. So here were some titles of some exhibitions that I really, that I liked, you know, when I was doing my research. I'll just let you take a look at them. I'll say a couple out loud for those who are not looking at the screen. Remember that you will die. Death Across Cultures. I mean, that's a really great title, if you ask me. I also liked this one, Whack, exclamation point. Art and the Feminist Revolution. This was just kind of fun. You can go to this and it'll generate an automatic title for your exhibition. The one that came up for me was To Find Properties of Gaming, a juried show of social practice. It really wasn't helpful at all because that will have nothing to do with my work. Okay, so I'm about to show you my work. I'm not going to show it to you in depth. I'm just doing a very brief overview. And hold on a second. There we go. And these are the goals for me. We'll keep moving. So this is just a brief statement. I'll read it about the work. I struggle with the notion of what a woman is. My work explores what it means to be a woman and the struggle to understand all that entails. Motherhood opened a world within me that is both painful and empowering, causing me to reevaluate the roles I have resisted and submitted to and how I see myself as a woman. Ruth invites the viewer to reevaluate the roles prescribed to women by society, to explore feminine and masculine traits that embody all genders, rather than the idea of being defined by one's outward appearance. And then the exhibition is going to consist of 28 video interviews, an art film projected on the wall, 17 to 20 paintings, and an interactive piece. So if anybody has questions as we're moving through, feel free to speak up. There'll be a place where I'll stop as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So I went out and there's about 30 interviews. I was very, very fortunate to have Adrian and a few other SFAA alumni participate in this project. I had participants from London and all throughout the US. And most of the people I had never met, and probably, and it was done on Zoom. So these were our interviews that were broken down to 3 minutes, and they're just asking the question, what does it mean to be a woman? And they're answering what that brings up for them. And these will be put on a monitor, and the viewer or the guest at the gallery will be able to choose which interviews they want to look at.
I can't do this interview because I have nothing to say on it. And so I turned.
I'm going to just pause it for a second. You might recognize a few people in this video. They're alumni. This is my sample of the art film going on the wall. This is just a very brief snippet of kind of what I'm going for with these.
Into a question that I could actually answer. I turned it into what does it mean to be a person who happens to be a woman?
I'm cisgender, so I've never particularly questioned whether I am a woman or not. But so much of my identity is about where I experience oppression.
Maybe in the last 4 years, I've been kind of questioning my gender identity.
I think that's been part of the frustration, is the myth of what a woman and her sexuality is if she's living a heterosexual life.
This jealousies and insecurities towards other women, or because I was attracted to them, and I didn't think I could be out about that because I'm with men.
We are already marginalized by society at large within the patriarchy umbrella. And then we create an extra push by saying we are women. What about we are humans?
It's synonymous with being a person, and many of the things that I may identify with as being a woman may also be something that someone who's a man identifies with as being a man, or someone who doesn't identify with either.
It means equals power to me. I feel very powerful being in a feminine body. I can create life, or at least I could pre-menopause.
Yeah, the concept of a non-binary identity, and that resonated a lot with me, but then it started me on this path of kind of thinking about my own expression of femininity.
I rebelled against the idea that I was born a girl. I was really aware, even at that young age, how differently my brother was treated than I was. You know, he didn't have to set tables. He didn't have to iron clothes. He didn't have to do laundry. He didn't have to clean the dishes. So even at a very young age, I realized that in my mother's eyes, I was meaningless. But this was not true in the eyes of my father. My father and I were very, very close. And if I hadn't had my father, I don't know where the hell I'd be today.
Obviously, we're physically different, genetically different, mentally different. I think we have a higher tolerance for pain.
So I think about visibility and invisibility. I think about danger of visibility as a woman, or even perceived danger or threat or challenge, that my visibility as a woman is potentially a problem.
I've always been small, and I like being small, and I like also feeling powerful.
A woman is a hero. She can do everything. She can hold the world in her hands.
Because the patriarchy has a negative impact on all of us, without a doubt, but it goes in a certain direction towards women, and that's people who identify as women, and also people who were assigned female at birth and brought up as women, or brought up as girls. And I think that must be the underpinning of why I do feel really strongly that being a woman is a big part of my identity, because of the oppression and violence against women.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause there for a second. That is I don't consider myself a filmmaker. I'm hoping to work with a filmmaker to make that, but that is the gist of where I'm going with the video portion. That the art film will be projected on the wall, and there will be a series of paintings. I'm just going to show you the gist of the paintings. That these are just a few paintings that are in the exhibition, so you have an idea of kind of the feeling, place, the mood, the look of them. They're basically taken from my daughter's selfies, from selfies that people from all over submitted to the project. And then they're also made up people and from my own inner world. And both men and women submitted pictures. The last part of the exhibition will be an interactive piece where I went on social media and posted very specific items that are gender specific, and people commented on them. And then there'll be a place for the public to comment on them in the gallery. And this is basically coming to the end of the presentation, but also kind of going back to my time at SFAA. I forget what painting instructor said this to me when I was just trying to title one painting, and that was that often it takes like 2 years to even understand what one piece is about. But we live in this world right now where when we have an exhibition, it's usually fresh work, and we're so close to it, and titling it and framing it and putting it into the world where it makes sense to the viewer. I do find it difficult, and with this project, really difficult. But I guess after doing the research to do this presentation, what I realized is that galleries and museums usually call in their board of trustees and they send out inquiries to a group of public, some kind of group that they're working with. They never see this as something that is necessarily easy. So these were some titles that came up in the work, in the paintings, and also phrases that came out of the interviews. I just wanted to pause here before I go send you over to the survey to answer, to maybe give me your insight about what you think the feeling place was of this exhibit, and maybe a good title. Any questions about the presentation that didn't make sense, or and I will just say that that my work is, I would not have work if it was not for the collaborations that I do with people. So, you know, west of Lincoln was like 300 people I was involved with to create that exhibition. This one's more like 120 people. I use social engagement and interviewing people to inform my work, because I feel that when I create a body of work about a topic like what does it mean to be a woman, that I have my own personal limited way of seeing that, and that through involving other people, I not only learn through them, but then I am able to kind of open up parts of me that I might be in denial or can't see or whatever like that.
Yeah, well, thanks for rereading that. Since I'm driving, I can't fill out your survey, but I mean, my sense from like hearing the interviews and is that you're examining much more of the gender of being a woman than both being a man and a woman. And the end of your statement kind of addresses both genders, or at least those two genders, or the, you know. And so I didn't know. To me, it sounds like you're focusing more on the experience or the social construction of being a woman, and like exploring that, but through a very like your process that has a very sort of democratic way in like the way you interview people, and you're allowing multiple voices versus just your own voice as an artist to exist as part of the project. So like curatorially, like people use the word like like curated in a democratic sort of way. I wonder if it's something like a democratic perspective, like colon, you know, like exploring the social construction of the woman, or of women, or something like that. I guess those are some thoughts I had in my head.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, thank you.
I'm so glad that you're doing something specifically on women, because it seems like, you know, every other so-called group, so-called oppressed group, is getting their time right now since the Black Lives Matter started. And with women, it's kind of like we've kind of gone into the background, and yeah. And I like the fact that you're talking about the influence of culture, and I think that's huge, and that's something that has not really been in the forefront that much. And the whole issue of age is really huge.
Yeah.
I'm older. And also being an artist, it's like, I always admired Georgia O'Keeffe, but then I discovered that she pretty much had, you know, somebody that sponsored her. She had a patron.
Right.
And the majority of us, we don't have quote unquote patrons. And anyway, so
well,
yeah, I'm really glad that you're doing this, and I love the whole thing of the interviewing people. I think that's
the video portion of the work, which informs the paintings,
right,
was always prompting the question, what does it mean to be a woman? But what happened, and what I'm asking you to dig into, is that through time, over the course of 2 years, the work became about something far broader than that. And it's not, I almost expected that. I mean, I like these organic paths where I'm not really in control, but rather I am just I often consider myself taking the journey with the people that I collaborate with. So what I would love to do is if you could take the Survey Monkey, and Beth, I'll send it to you separately. Okay, so if you have any questions while you're taking, it's basically 3 questions. One is, I give a series of titles and some taglines that have come out of the work, but if you had something come up for you that you were feeling strongly about, feel free to put it in the, there's a 3rd box there. When I was at SFAA talking about hanging, I took like again, I graduated in 90, so, I took a professional, it was like being a professional, when you leave SFAI class. And one of the things I remember them saying is that an artist should never hang their own exhibition because they cannot see, they're too close to it. And I feel like this title was kind of the same thing for me. So Beth, you had mentioned the democratic process. Something that really excites me personally is I love the unknown. And I also am very fascinated by people who think and just be in the world so differently than me. And so with these videos, I do not vet, even in the other work that I've done, I never vet who I work with. It's really important that the people who participate in my projects, I try to get as diverse as possible. I do lots of reaching out, and I always open it up. I put, a call to respond to these projects publicly in many places where people won't know me. But I never vet because it's so interesting to hear and to experience people, how they are different, which is what I just said. But I wanted to also say that it was very difficult to get men to answer this question. I think we're very much in a time where people feel afraid of being canceled or saying the wrong thing. So it made it very challenging to get men to answer this question, which it wasn't a question about them literally, responding, what does it mean to be a woman, but rather that there are women in their lives and what is their perspective on what it does mean to be a woman from their perspective. So are we pretty good there? Did everybody finish up?
I was going to just ask if Beth could restate what she said about democratizing. I tried to get it down, but I couldn't.
Oh, you're sweet.
Didn't catch it
all. Yeah,
all.
I can. Well, in the art context, like something that's more contemporary right now is like curating a show with a democratic perspective. So that meaning that, the idea of having a formal like show, the solo show that's just like a painting, an exhibition of 12 paintings, like what's interesting is to bring in more layers through like a democratic sort of narrative. So, from that perspective, like Ruth's project is doing, that is creating more of a democratic perspective. And I mean, the diversity of those voices and viewpoints, might be argued. I have to point out in a world where, identity politics is very strong. So just that someone brought up the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think, feminism and what it means to be a woman, probably means different things to people from different points of privilege or experiences of privilege or not privilege. But I had suggested something like a democratic perspective, like colon, or like, then the tagline might be like something like exploring the social construction being a woman. It's such a complicated and rich topic because, you know, we're exploring like a non-binary system of genders right now.
Right.
I don't know if you can still hear me. I'm going through a great time, but you know, it's just, I have a 14-year-old. I mean, we have discussions about pronouns all the time, and you know, I'm starting to understand it a lot more, and you know, so it's just that, you know, there's so many kind of charged discussions over even the binary system of man versus woman, or you know, identifying that way, and then of course identity politics of different class and races, and those varied experiences. So yeah, I hope I repeated what I said before and more.
No, that was great. Thank you. I didn't realize, but you know, that that was becoming of more interest, but you know, it's not surprising. Artists seem to pick up on things without needing to read it. You know what I mean?
So Beth, I put it in the chat so we have it on the record, and what I typed was a democratic perspective exploring the social construction of being a woman. Does that seem accurate?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Awesome.
There's a concept called the social construction of reality, which is definitely true. And until you've done a lot of traveling and living in other countries, at least for myself, I wasn't aware of it. And anyway, so that comes into play here. That really influences everyone in how our particular filter for each individual is radically different.
Right. I think a little bit like and in doing this presentation, I realized that there are two things that I'm hoping to possibly integrate. One is that the art film on the wall will be relatable statements that anyone can relate to. They don't need to know the context of the person saying it. You know, being a woman makes me feel empowered because I can create life, like a sentence like that.
Yeah.
But then in looking at the 3-minute videos, you realize that actually people are quite different than you, and you often don't relate to them, even if you have shared beliefs, that there is this way that we all are connected and yet we're all quite different.
Yeah.
So let's open it up. Let's talk more broadly.
Talk a little bit about how I experienced it when I looked at it before the critique started. I went in and looked at the videos, and then I also looked at the paintings, and I looked at your titles of the paintings and kind of some of the descriptors. And it occurred to me, like, the more the democratic part of it, the more the video part of it, and what you're going to use as the sort of the third part of your exhibition is the interactive part. Those are the more like opening up, the more democratic, and I really like how those function. And I think that social construct idea is really strong in those. But with the paintings, I feel like it's much more about like what that experience is for you, you know, like the filtering of what I think it means to be a woman. And, you know, they're consistent, and it's cool that they're in the same space. But I really wanted to say that I loved some of your titles and how that really communicated to me, like where, not so much like, you know, in a dogmatic way, like I need to understand the work through this title, but a lot more of where you're coming from. And for me, I thought the titles were really wonderful and effective, and I would just like keep those titles and, you know, keep working them and thinking about what it means to you, because I really like that dialogue between like the broader social ramifications of femininity and questioning that, and like how we all deal with aging and motherhood, all those things, but then what it is to you.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I think the paintings are kind of my own personal assessment of the change that's taking place within me through the interaction of other people and the observations that I'm kind of coming to.
I think it's hard to filter that out being the artist making the work. You know, we put our own lens, our own bias or our own experiences into it because, you know, we're making the work. But I've been following you on social media, and I see that topics of memory and process, you know, kind of like past, but those also play into the work. And I think that aligns well with the video pieces where women are kind of replaying experience through memory. I'm glad Beth brought up the democratic aspect because I felt a lot of your work is about, as you mentioned at the beginning, community and interaction. I think something that's missing in American culture versus like when I visit my cousins in Hungary is girls will have parties where it's just all girls. And maybe that happens in our culture with younger people, like sleepovers and things like that. But as we get into adulthood, it's more of a competitive, it's more of a catty, mean girl. You know, high school becomes this really like filtering out who's alpha and who's got control. And what I like about this work is that you're reconnecting women with each other, and even juxtapositioning, you know, some of the choices that you're making with putting the old next to the young, or putting the man next to the, you know, or the cisgender next to the self-identified, is showing relationship with each other, or trying to make a connection, bridging what we're really lacking in a lot of respects in America or in the US. So I feel that the work is largely about trying to make these connections. And so that's why I chose, because you did mention interdependence and independence in one of your titles, but it wasn't on the Survey Monkey. So I brought that back in, woman, independent, interdependence.
Right.
Because kind of bringing this togetherness back.
Thank you, Alex. I'm almost like this is, well, first off, I've been understimulated for the last year and a half. So I think a lot of us feel really grateful to be with each other because we come from a place where we have something in common. But it's very enriching to hear, and almost, and it's a lot to hear, but it's so good. Thank you. Thank you for the comment.
I guess I wanted to just bring up, you know, I mean, art's about, you know, addressing or exploring questions or raising questions, right? And so the context of your show is, I mean, maybe that's the hard thing about the exhibition title. It's like with your, I mean, one thing is your audience, your particular audience, like the people who will be coming to the show, like considering that and the language you use, but at the same time, maybe, I mean, an exhibition title could be like very suggestive of a sentence or of a question more than a statement. And maybe that's one way to think about it, because there's that very personal, individual feeling with your paintings. And there seems to be like unknown there that's really powerful, because we're in a flux of so many things surrounding being a woman, you know, I mean, and being female and then being a woman, you know, like just everything in between. And so, you know, bringing all of the elements in this show together, and then what is that context and what is that question? Or, I mean, so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just suggesting to think as a question versus a statement, maybe, because we all don't really know as a society right now. We're like exploring it all. Yeah.
Right. That is so great. And I think that that's something to even bring to this conversation outside of my own work is that where you're exhibiting can make a big difference. So if we look at the demographics of where I live, it is one of the whitest counties outside of Orange County in California. It is also a very diverse group of people that live here within that spectrum. I think when we're titling our exhibitions, it's definitely, it could be very different to title this exhibition in the middle of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, maybe bringing up pronouns, I don't know, I just thought, and I'm not like 100%, I'm still learning about all the pronouns correctly, but it's so catchy, like, well, you know, I think on Zoom, if you identify as a woman or girl, you write she, her, right, she/her. And that's small and simple, but I guess I just wanted to throw it out there because is that really, I mean, first of all, it's very contemporary, it's simple, and it's identifiable, but it's also very much this pronoun language. And maybe that alone could be the title because that seems like the area of gender identity that you're exploring in your work.
What does it mean?
That's really good.
One thing that I've noticed, you know, since we do have the dominant culture is the patriarchy, whether you want to admit it or not, it's still the dominant culture. And it takes generations for cultures to evolve and change. And I want to be a woman. I don't want to have to be like a guy. You know, it's like, you know, the women that are you know, glorified and get respect is like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, yeah, I like the fact that it's an older woman, but she's there and respected only because she's totally into her career and she's very successful and she's in law and politics. But you wouldn't necessarily get that kind of respect as a older female artist. And I don't want to have to be a guy. I'm female. I think the whole thing of being feminine should be celebrated, not necessarily, I don't want to have to like, yes, I like being physically active and everything, but that doesn't mean, you know, that I'm going to be a sports person. It's like the, you know, young females that are into sports. Well, that's kind of, once again, kind of going along with, you know, the whole masculine patriarchy, worship of youth. So, yeah. So anyway,
yes,
I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but
no, that's okay. That's a good point. I think in the work that I do, I love highlighting everyday people who often are never seen as, I've been on projects where I'm encouraged to get people who are known because the projects will have more reachability. And I hate that. I hate that. I don't want to hear from the mayor. I want to hear from the mother of 5 kids or, you know, the single man who lives by himself and he's 70. But I would love to take this conversation to a broader perspective. So I'm wondering if anybody here has had any art exhibitions where they felt like the title was really successful or absolutely was a big mistake, or if there's any commentary on exhibition titles and how you respond to them in general. And of course, I hated, but I was not surprised that so many places were going to say it needs to be sexy. Oh, God.
Oh, dear. I find that's the hardest part for me, is coming up with a title to my individual work and to things in general. To me, that's the hard part.
I think not remembering the title of any exhibition that was important to us, not that everybody's that may not be speaking up, but that might say a lot to the importance of a title of an exhibition, right? Which ones do you even remember?
And you do have to be aware of what your local culture is in an area, because if you're not aware of that, nobody's going to come to your exhibit.
Yeah, that's the
Unfortunately.
thing. The title is the hook that gets people to come
That's
in
the
the door.
hook, right? Like they say in sales and business, you bet.
It
Gotta
conveys
have it.
meaning too. You know, like if you just said, you know, New Works by Ruth Chase, that conveys like, okay, that might be interesting and enigmatic to people in Grass Valley, but it's also kind of
Right.
egotistical and different than what the work is about, you know. So
Exactly.
it seems like you want something that's like slightly enigmatic, but also, you know, descriptive enough that people sort of know what they're getting into. And that, of course, is also about the lead image you choose to, you know, publicize the show. Like that's such an important part of it too. Like how that communicates the meaning. And
Right. Yeah, I mean, that is even a question, like, do you promote an art exhibit with like a text-based image, or do you actually show an image of something in the art exhibit? Right? I wanted
you
to
could do
share.
more than one too.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't do research, so I didn't plan on saying this, so I'm not going to have the name of the artist here, but maybe somebody here will know. When I'm teaching art, I often go into this thing about titling work. And there's an example of, so you just imagine you go, there's an example of this art piece. When you look at it, it is like The Last Supper, but it looks a little like a cheap photograph, like it was kind of faded, and you're wondering why this is even significant at all, right? It's The Last Supper, it's a photograph of a painting, you know, it just, and it's kind of dingy. But if you creep up close to the title says, and I'm probably getting this wrong, but just go with it. I know it's close enough. It says The Last Supper photographed through a jar of urine.
Photographed through a dark what?
A jar of urine.
Oh,
So
gross.
then you start to think, okay, now the title has fully engaged you,
Now you remember.
into a much broader conversation about the piece that you're looking at. It starts to take on a ton of new meaning. And so I'm throwing that out to everybody here as you know, are titles to artworks important to you, and do you feel passionate about, like, you know, when people untitled, is that a good thing because it allows you to think about it more, or does it infuriate you because it doesn't give you anything? Yeah.
I'm really interested to see your show, because right now I have an exhibition coming up in Oakland, and the curator identifies as they and them, and everyone in the gallery is now writing what gender they are, whether it's she or her or they or them. And then the place I used to work, Creative Growth, people, I was talking to a friend last night who works there still, and people are starting to do that. So it's, since I'm exhibiting here, I'm starting to think, okay, well, maybe I need to, so I feel like your work, maybe because I'm in the Bay Area, but I love the idea of her, she, someone said just use the pronouns, or something that will, like, okay, so you're going to learn about this whole new thing that's happening in society right now that we're all kind of needing to look at, you know, in a way.
Right.
So that's, I think it's so timely.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, like, I don't know if it will go, you know, how it will go over in Grass Valley, but here I think it's a really interesting exhibit that, because and even the interviews, I thought, I'm so busy working and then creating art for a couple shows myself, so I couldn't take the time to really reflect on the questions you had, because otherwise, and I told other people about it, I wanted to support you, but to be honest with you, those are huge. Like I wouldn't even know, in a way. Well, anyways, that's what I wanted to say. And I think I love your work. I everything I see in the videos and the paintings. I think it's going to be an incredible exhibition. So,
Thank you. I hope so. Thank you.
sure.
Lior, you had your hand up, and you don't speak that often, so I'm so curious. So it's great to have you here. Thank you, first off, for showing up.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I wanted to say that I love the work, and I was really absorbed and kind of intrigued. And it's like for me there were like there are two parts that are really different and are kind of intriguing in a different way. So the videos, it was really an important opportunity for me to listen to those sincere conversations that I would probably never be able to have myself, or with this wide variety of women,
Right.
or binary self-defined and so forth. But then it's very, obviously it's very verbal and literal, and I think for that it's in a way it's less open to interpretation. It's you're just kind of hearing what they're revealing, and the title, I would say, is less important that for these type of art pieces, and then it's a completely different experience when I'm looking at your paintings, and then it's just this is something that is completely, you're in a like you could have asked people to, instead of interviewing them, to send you paintings of that about this question. That would be something completely different. And when I look at the painting and I have you let me have my own interpretations and my own, like, reading your visual language and everything, it's like a completely different experience, also like full of emotions and thoughts, but it's just something very different. And there I feel that sometimes a title makes like a complete it can have like give me a complete different revelation, or
Right.
Lior,
do you do film and video? Is that what your practice is?
I'm actually, I've been a designer most of my career, so I did some videos, but just at school and a little bit after school. But since then, it's been mostly design.
Yeah, so I've done several films. I've even done a film that has been at a couple of film festivals, but I don't, I'm kind of like that person is like, I paint on Sundays, but I don't call myself a painter. I feel that way about film. So it's hard for me to know like how to, like with painting, I understand that idea of how to, I'm anyhow, the video and film aspect is still new. And I think I'm really craving dialogue to understand myself better through using that medium. But thank you.
Can I?
Dave lives in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, I know, the small town. You'd asked about titles. I like titling stuff. I just sort of let the title, I don't know, just how do I put it? I don't think a lot about the title. It just, if something comes to me, then that's the title.
Right.
And oftentimes, while I'm working, a word will float into my head, and I'll say, that's it. And, so some of the titles of shows that I've done, Everything is for Sale, that was in a gallery, and
that's a
kind
great
of play
title.
on the whole commercial aspect of galleries. And the historical studio, because a lot of my work is about history, and I don't want to get all into it, but it made sense at the time. You have to have been there. Smorgasbord, that was like a kind of a survey of my work. After
That's a great title, Dave. Wow.
So people could like pick and choose, you know, what they like.
For sale.
And then I was one called Portraits and Bobbleheads, because a lot of my work is sort of like a head that looks, it's like a bobblehead kind of paint. They're paintings. I've also done some little sculptures that are like bobbleheads. His and Hers, art as bath towel sets. And those were drawings of men and women. And they were like, you know, set side by side. The way it was hung was, they were next to each other, like bath towel sets. And miniature worlds, where I had, you can kind of see them behind me. That's from the Miniature Worlds show. They're very small photographs and very small drawings that were hung in a space with like benches in front. So you actually, they were made them feel even smaller. You couldn't get up to them, sort of like that. So they were extra small. They were so small you couldn't see them. So they were miniature worlds. Anyway, those were some of my titles. And then my comment about your presentation, which is like so thorough and complete. It's really impressive. You put so much thought and energy into it. But I was wondering about your statement. You said that it was motherhood that made you start on this whole path of questioning what it is to be a woman. So that makes me feel like before you were a mother, you weren't thinking about it. You were just like, you know, it was just like you were a woman. It wasn't something that generated any kind of anxiety or questioning or thought. It was just like, you know, that's who you were, and so you just go along. But then womanhood happened, and that's when all the questions started coming. But I didn't really get, like, what was it about becoming a mother that triggered this transition from being comfortable with yourself and just to the point of not even thinking about it, to like all of a sudden, like, I mean, just being consumed by this question and doing all this work and questioning and videos and paintings and everything like that. Like, I don't know what it is that made that trigger. And so that's my thoughts.
Hey, Dave, that's really great. Thank you, because that allows me to look at my statement and realize where I might be miscommunicating. And, you know, really just to say that with all of us, when we're naming work or naming art exhibits, it's very difficult to step away from yourself and to think about your work or yourself objectively. And, you know, if I had a gallery that was representing me, that process would probably be more, I would have more help with it. This exhibition is solely put on by me. And so having a group like this, which I would encourage anybody to do for their own work, and just knowing that you're presenting it before you step out into the public is like hugely helpful, because I'm trying to see myself. I'm trying to see the work. I'm trying to understand it. It's very difficult being in the middle of it. So thank you, Dave.
Have you thought about having a question in the title for the show?
Yeah, I think that's what Beth had mentioned.
Oh, okay.
No, I
Sorry.
haven't. No, you're bringing up something that Beth brought up, and I thought that
Okay.
was a really good point.
And I like the excuse me, I like the he, she idea. What about having something like he, she dash, what is woman, or who is woman, something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I will take all, I think we're coming close to our time here.
Okay.
Or we've gone a little bit
I'm done.
over, but besides saying thank you to everybody. And Kathy, I was not cutting you off. Thank you. I love that you participate and you show up so fully. But that you guys took the time to be here and to listen. And I had a moment to really share my work and get some feedback. I mean, I can't even say how valuable this is. I've really valuable, because otherwise, probably like most of you, I'm still somewhat isolated a bit. You know, I'm not in my artist groups. I'm not in public. I'm starting to become more that way. So I find this really helpful. And hopefully it's helpful for you too. And seriously, if you, so we have a next exhibition, right, Adrian? Before we leave, we should do like closing notes, right? Our next meetup is, do you know when that is? And do you want to speak to that a bit? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Get out the calendar. So it would be June 27th. Yeah, June 27th, 10:30 in the morning. And we'll be looking at Alex's work, who's here today, and also Nona's work. We're both originally scheduled for today, but then we had a few little.
Any closing questions or anything else before we part?
Just real quick, I want to build a little bit on what Lior was saying and what you were saying about that piece with the Last Supper. For me, if the meaning of the piece is all in the title, like that Last Supper piece, it doesn't do, the work doesn't mean as much to me. But if the title gives you a little bit more insight into the piece, then I think that's really valuable. Did that make sense?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. For me, the punch has to be in the image, and then the invitation to maybe feel another layer of it. The title might give it a different context, kind of like a Joseph Albers piece. It depends on your foreground background situation as to how you're thinking. But for me, a painting, there's a visceral feeling when you're in front of a painting that either grabs you or doesn't grab you. And I put in the chat the pentamento of reveal, because the word reveal kept coming up to me as I looked at your images, that you're revealing something of yourself. And in a title, you might even have it be like an invitation for someone to see you, like see me, the pentamento of reveal, or something of an invitation in the title, sort of making it interactive, as if you're recognizing that a viewer would be, could be, will be there. Does that make any sense?
It does. It makes me think of a call to action
Yes, exactly. Kind of that. Like, hey, pay attention, I'm talking to you.
I like it because it also alludes to gender reveal, and it kind of weaves that into it. And pentamento, changing your mind.
Or layers. I kept thinking of the unveiling of self, a private part of yourself that it was very introspective, and it's something that people don't usually see in passing or in a conversation in your friendship or anything like that, and could invite somebody to ponder on their own self-reflection, like an invitation,
Yeah.
Well, this is me. What about you? Just an idea.
Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you.